of Jesus came in the form of stories that he appeared in the forms of visions, the forms of dreams, and so forth. And so actually that story was then taken and put further back into Mark, and then a bodily resurrection story was replaced as the final scene in Mark, and the Mount of Transfiguration took its place from the end to further into the center. So to suggest that somehow that the Gospels have more of an ontological and have more of an objective credibility to them as far as the more what we'd consider like extra and supernatural events that are described in it: virgin birth, angels and shepherds in the field, Star of Bethlehem, Mount of Transfiguration, resurrection from the dead, ascension into heaven, and so forth. There really is not any more credible evidence to believe that based upon anything other than faith, any more than there is evidence to believe on his literature, his sacred lore, based on faith. Regardless of what you say, ultimately Christianity or any other world religion or a belief system is an issue of faith and faith only.
Obviously, all of our worldviews involve faith. Obviously, all of our relationships with each other as people, with God, is a faith relationship. That is undisputable. Secondly, 50 to 75 years ago, it was taught on every major university campus in the United States that the Gospels were not written until the 200s, maybe the 300s. It was taught on almost every major American university campus that the resurrection of Christ was something that was tacked on by the 2nd, 3rd, 4th century church to give a flagging religion some punch. Unfortunately, for those teachers, the past 50 to 75 years, we have unearthed so many manuscripts, so close to the date of authorship, so many letters by so many early church fathers, that it is abundantly clear that right from the get-go, as early back as you can go, Jesus was risen from the dead, was preached by the first followers of Jesus Christ. It was not something that was added later. His virgin birth was preached right from the get-go. In the book of Acts, Peter stands up at Pentecost and says, "You guys killed the Christ. God raised him from the dead." There never is a non-supernatural Jesus that is preached by those first century followers of Christ. There never is a dead Jesus that is proclaimed by those first century followers of Christ. And in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, that was written approximately 50, 51, or 52 AD, Paul recites a creed in 1 Corinthians 15. "For what I received," Paul writes, "I passed on to you as of first importance, that Christ died for your sins, according to the Scriptures, that he was buried according to the Scriptures, and that he was raised from the dead according to the Scriptures." That passage, 1 Corinthians 15, was penned by Paul in 50, 51, 52 AD, and he's referring to a creed that he received from others. Now you're back into the 40s AD. You're within 15 years of the events. So regardless of how far you push it back, the overwhelming evidence is the first followers of Christ never knew a dead Jesus. They preached a risen Lord Jesus whom they had seen with their eyes. And that has been a source of intense embarrassment to every religion department on every campus in the United States that bought into that line of thinking that taught the Gospels were not written until the 200s or 300s. The fact that Ignatius, Bishop of Antioch, quotes the Synoptic Gospel in 96 AD. The fact that Clement, Bishop of Rome, quotes all 4 Gospels, including John, in letters he wrote in 115 AD, smashes that whole school of thought that was taught on every major American university campuses 50 to 75 years ago, that the Gospels weren't written until the 200s or the 300s. How could that be true if the Gospels were quoted in letters written in 96 AD and 115 AD? The evidence is crystal clear. The Gospels were written in the 1st century, and the Gospels insist Jesus claimed to be God, and the evidence is that Jesus rose from the dead. That's the clear evidence.
I just don't see the connection between free will. I think there's an argument that can be made that free will in and of itself isn't a piece of evidence that points to an indication that there's a God. I'm not saying that there isn't a God.
Right.
I'm just saying that there's...
That's not good evidence.
Right.
Right. I hear you.
I'm saying the argument can be made that, no, it's just because in our evolution, we have come to evolve to the point that we recognize our separation as different people and as an independent being, and we have come to evolve as a society to set up laws to limit that sort of want and desire or whatever, to injure or hurt some other person, and limit our own free will in that sense.
Okay, but my point is, if you say there is no God, and you limit reality to matter and energy, therefore, then all you and I are is matter and energy. Which means there's always a material reason for what I do. The reason that I treat this man however I treat him is because there's certain chemical reactions that go off, and that's why I do what I do.
Right, I understand, but I think can't you also say that there is a voluntary, we can voluntarily choose which reaction we want to go on? You don't think we can voluntarily say...
Because then what you're saying is, there's more to me than just matter and energy. There's a me that can judge my chemical reactions. But you see, if you limit reality to matter and energy, there's no me to judge my chemical reactions. All I am is a highly, highly complex chemical reaction.
But I would also argue that we are such that we can distinguish between two things and say, okay, yeah, I know that I have to fire this neuron and shoot acetylcholine onto this muscle fiber to make my arm go this way to do this, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to not perform that chemical reaction. I'm not going to perform this act of hating this person because I choose not to do that chemical reaction.
Yeah, but you see, when you say I choose, that I doesn't exist. Rather, you've got another chemical reaction that's more powerful than that chemical reaction to hit the guy, and so the more powerful chemical reaction is why you do whatever it is you do.
Well, I'm saying in evolving to the point, evolving our nervous system to the point that we distinguish separation between beings. We distinguish that my arm, my body, my whatever, me in the sense of just my entity, my shell, whatever.
Yeah, but if there is no God,
me being separate from him.
The shell is all there is. The material, matter is all there is. There's no soul. You don't have a soul if there is no God. You don't have an I that goes beyond the chemical reaction. All you've got's the chemical reaction, that's it.
Right, but just by saying that, doesn't, in my mind, necessarily say that there's no free will, that there's no...
What does that mean? What does that mean?
That, I mean, there's no choice.
That's right, that's where I'm obviously trying to pin you, right? I'm trying to say, you know that your experience of life teaches you that you do have a free will. You know that you're...
I don't argue that point. My point that I argue is that free will being a piece of evidence indicating that there is a God. Isn't it possible just to say that, no, I'm just a being that chooses to eat because I'm hungry?
Fine. So it's an instinct. You eat because it's an instinct. I kick him in the jaw because it's an instinct.
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
Well,
we just have instincts, man. We don't have a free will.
I'm not saying there's no free will. I'm saying that there is free will, but certain things are instincts.
All right, fine. But my point is, if there is no God, everything is instinct.
No, certain things are higher cerebral processes.
They're still regardless of how high they are, I agree with you, they're complex. It's still matter and energy. It's all it is. There's not a soul that's different from the biochemical reactions. There's the biochemical reactions.
There is no soul, you're right. But there is an individual, a personality, just with matter and energy. Now at death, these are going to the matter is going to lose its organization, and the I, the conscious experience, is just going to disappear. But, I mean, it's just the way it is.
You are willing to take a leap there that I am unwilling to take. Just listen to what you're
Is that
saying.
easier than to say that there was a God that makes this?
You are willing to say that I am just matter and energy, but consciousness developed. Something different from matter and energy developed out of matter and energy. If you can buy that one, I find that incredible.
It's another level of
Matter and energy. All you have is matter and energy. If there is no God. Now, how are you all of a sudden going to have consciousness springing out of matter and energy? It's illogical. It is totally irrational. I mean, and you should have seen it at MIT. At MIT, they were really working. They were at MIT, they were saying, "Well, you're right, Cliffe. We can't explain it, but we're going to get there, bud. You just wait. We're going to get there sometime, and sometime we're going to be able to explain to you how, just from matter and energy, we can get a conscience and consciousness and a free will." And I said, "No, man. You're never going to be able to do that because you're limiting reality. You're saying, here's reality, matter and energy. We are never going to get a soul, a free will, a personality, this nebulous, non-material thing, if you limit at the start reality to matter and energy. It's impossible."
See, but back in the let's say Middle Ages, they couldn't explain all of matter and all the way that matter and energy interacted. You know, in physics, for instance.
Right.
But now we understand a lot more because we use science. Now, isn't that better than just appealing to this, this God that we don't know exists? That I don't know. That's the easy way out. That's the way that primitive man explained his life, his surroundings. You know, but we're beyond that point.
We're to the point where we have a scientific explanation for everything.
No, we don't. But it keeps getting better and better. But if you stay with
No,
God,
sir.
if you stay with the explanation that religion gives you, you don't get anywhere because it doesn't change. It's not
No.
any question.
No. You better keep science in the area of matter and energy, because that's what science is based on, the repeatability of an experiment. And you better realize that no matter how much good science you do, you're never going to be able to put together a scientific marriage or a scientific friendship, or you're never going to be able to go on a scientific date. And the MIT student who's dating his computer is a sad, sad person. I was at UMass Amherst, and after speaking there the last day, this one student came up to me, worked for the student paper at UMass Amherst, and the guy says to me, "Cliffe, thanks for making it all so clear about Jesus." I said, "Well, that's great. If it's clear for you, you must be ready to put your faith in him." He said, "No way." I said, "Why not?" He said, "Because, Cliffe, I like to drink and fornicate." And so he sat down behind me. I'm just about to start again, and this second guy walks up, and he says to me, "Cliffe, thanks for making this bit about Jesus. It makes so much sense. It's really clear to me now, like never before." And I said, "Well, that's wonderful. You must be ready to put your faith in Christ." He says, "No way." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because I like to drink and fornicate." And the guy sitting behind me says, "Well, Cliffe, it sounds like that's a common problem here at UMass Amherst. We all like to drink and fornicate." Yeah, that's right. I'm the same way. And Jesus cramps my style. Therefore, I'm going to run away from him. And then I'll hide behind all sorts of neat intellectual smoke screens. Like, I can't prove he exists. Like, oh, there's some contradictions in the Bible. What they are, I'm not sure, but I know they're in there somewhere because a professor told me they're in there somewhere. So they got to be there. I mean, how many times have I heard that one? Like, oh, come on, man, you can't prove to me that God exists. Well, that's right. And you can't prove to me your mother loves you. You can't prove to me your mother's not just fattening you up to drop arsenic in your tea over Christmas vacation. I mean, come on, man. You don't go around proving things in life. You look for evidence, and the evidence is your mom really does love you. That's why you don't bring your chemistry kit to the Christmas lunch. Instead, you eat the food. Based on evidence, you have faith. That's the way it is with me. Based on evidence, I have faith as well. So, that was a long answer to that question. Yes, sir.
Just out of curiosity, how do you feel in regards to Mormonism and their claim of the second coming of Christ?
You bet.
And if they're right, then in the Bible it claims he's going to come again, but then it would have already happened.
Okay, great point.
I'm just curious.
Right. This gentleman asked a great question. He says, "Respond, please, to Mormonism." The reason that's a great question is because it brings up the main issue that I've been trying to bang away on. I can't see God, you can't see God. I've never heard God's voice audibly, you've never heard his voice audibly. So in order for you and me to get to know God, God's going to have to open up and reveal what God is like. That's where Muhammad, the avatars of Hinduism, Joseph Smith step into the picture. They all claim to be revealing God accurately. Now, I'm sorry. If anybody says to me, I got a pipeline to God, I'm going to be skeptical. But I'm not going to be a cynic and just wipe them out. I'm going to say, okay, fine. Give me evidence that you're a reliable source of information about God. And obviously what the Mormons have done is they've said Joseph Smith, Brigham Young, and the prophets that follow them are reliable sources of information about God. Obviously the Hindus have said the avatars are reliable sources of information about God. Obviously a Muslim is saying, I trust Muhammad to reveal God accurately. And I'm standing out here saying, I trust Jesus Christ to reveal God accurately. And because Jesus and Joseph Smith contradict each other, they both can't be right. So therefore, I got to ask myself, what's the evidence to support the credibility of Joseph Smith? What's the evidence to support the credibility of Jesus Christ? And my point is, based on Jesus' lifestyle, he lived a sinless life. Based on his ethical teachings, which have the ring of truth, like do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Based on his death on a cross, where at a moment of physically excruciating pain, instead of cursing his enemies the way I would, he prays, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. But most importantly, based on his resurrection from the dead, for me it becomes a no-brainer. The evidence is this Jesus is reliable in a way that Joseph Smith, Brigham Young are not. Therefore, I'll follow Jesus, not Joseph Smith and Brigham Young. See, but that's the bottom line question. Who are you going to trust to tell you the truth about God? Yes.
Being that Jesus lived such a long time ago and Joseph Smith, relative to that very short amount of time, don't you think that, say, we gave it 2,000 years, the Mormons could manipulate and doctor their their annex to the Bible in order, as perhaps hypothetically it has been done? Maybe Jesus didn't live such a perfect life and it has been changed and edited. Don't you think that could evolve in the same sort of way? That's
it's impossible.
That's what I fear.
Right.
That it's propaganda.
Right. I'll tell you why it's impossible. The Gospels that we have in English today are not based on the Latin Vulgate out of the Middle Ages. Rather, the Gospels that we have today are based on over 5,200 Greek manuscripts or pieces of manuscript dated from the 1st to the 10th century AD, all agreeing to an infinitesimal degree. And you can push the study of Jesus back into the 1st century, and you never come up against a non-supernatural Jesus. You never come up against a Jesus who didn't rise from the dead. You pushed it back in your historical record, and you've got a supernatural Jesus, God in human form. You've got a bodily resurrection from the dead, and you've got this incredible life, a sinless life, right from the inception. So the record is real clear. And we have the record of Joseph Smith and Brigham Young. And we have the very clear record that they taught that dark skin is a result of being cursed by God. You compare that type of racism to what Jesus taught in Luke chapter 10, where he makes a direct frontal attack on racism, and you got a fundamental contradiction between the two. You go right back to the Mormon records, and you've got polygamy right there with Joseph Smith and Brigham Young. You read the New Testament, and there's no way you can justify polygamy. Now, my point being, Brigham Young and Joseph Smith claimed to be followers of Jesus. If they'd have never made that claim, I wouldn't have my point that I'm making right now. But in light of the fact that they claim to be followers of Jesus, and yet so clearly contradict him, we've got an historical problem. Thank you, sir, for raising those thoughtful issues. I appreciate it a lot.
If he was God incarnate and God knows no sin, then how? I mean, we all function through the mind, and he obviously had a mind. How can he register sin if he knows no sin?
Okay, good question. If he was really God in human form, then how could he sin? Very simple. As God in human form, he chose to limit himself. In Matthew chapter 24, Jesus is asked, when is your second coming going to be? And Jesus says very clearly, no one knows the day or hour of my return, not the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. So obviously what Jesus is claiming is, he is God in human form, but he's God accepting incredible limitations. And so, as God limiting himself and becoming a human being, he was really tempted by Satan. We read about that in Matthew chapter 4. In the wilderness, Jesus was tempted by Satan, but Jesus repeatedly said no to Satan's temptation and repeatedly said yes to his Father's will. He was tempted in every way, just as we are, the author of Hebrews writes in the book of Hebrews. He was really tempted, but he consistently chose to say no to temptation and to say yes to his Father's will. That's one of the reasons I respect him so much. I have tried to say yes to God's will, and I have repeatedly blown it.
I just don't know if God would limit himself like that. I mean,
Okay, good question. You say, I just don't know if God would limit himself like that. Okay, good point. I understand your thinking. My point is, God does limit himself. And that's a key point for me, especially when it comes to the problem of evil. Professor at Northwestern University in Chicago steps out of the crowd and says, I can prove to you that your God doesn't exist. I said, really? Show me. He said, it's real simple. You believe that God is all-powerful. You believe that he's loving. Evil exists. Well, if evil exists, he can't be all-powerful and all-loving. It's impossible. And I said, sir, there's one possibility you've overlooked, and that's the possibility that the all-powerful God chooses to partially limit his power by creating human beings with a free will. The Allies, a few years ago, could have stormed straight into Baghdad, and they could have leveled Baghdad. The Allies had the power to. The Allies chose to limit their power and stop and not storm Baghdad. When you've got power, you can choose to limit it. That doesn't mean you lose your power. It means you choose to limit it. And my argument is, God can choose to limit his power by creating me free. Which is why, if I go up and slap her in the face, and I say to you, God made me do it because God's all-powerful, I'm lying through my teeth to you. God chose to limit his power by giving me a free will, and God will hold me responsible for striking her in the face. Because he gave me a free will.
how free is his will if he knows what's going to happen?
Great question. A lot of students say to me, and I'll never forget this, this one student at UCLA said, listen man, none of us have free will because we can't do anything we want to. I say, wait a second, you are really getting confused here. To have free will does not mean that I can do anything I want and escape the consequences of my decision. You have free will. You can party here at the University of Texas, and then you will flunk. And to say, wait a second, because I flunk, it means I don't have free will, is bogus thinking. To have free will does not mean, hey, I get to escape the consequences of my decisions. No way. If you want to have sex with anything that walks, and you get HIV, that doesn't change the fact you've got free will. What it means is you have sex with someone who's got HIV, and you probably will get HIV. You still have a free will, but there are consequences to your decisions. Well, that's exactly what Jesus taught. You and I have free will, but by gollies, there are consequences to our decisions. That's the kind of world God set up. Cause and effect. You got a free will, make your decisions, but I can promise you there will be consequences to your decisions, Jesus says. And watch out, Jesus says, the ultimate decision that you and I have to make as human beings is, do we want to spend eternity together with God in heaven or eternity separate from God in hell? We're free to decide, but we're not free to escape the consequences of our decision. If we choose to reject Christ, then the consequence will be eternity separate from Christ. That'll be hell. If we choose to live together with Christ, there will be a consequence. We'll spend eternity together with him in heaven. We're free, but we're not free to escape the consequences. You're free to walk to the top of the building and jump. You're not free to escape the consequence. You'll splatter all over the pavement. That's the kind of world that we live in. Free will, but consequences to our free decisions.
How free is Jesus' choice if he never knew sin? If he never actually sinned, then he would never know what a sin is.
Okay, great point. Your point is, wait a second. If Jesus never sinned, then he never really knew what evil was. So he really didn't have free will.
Yeah, he didn't have a choice to sin because he didn't know sin.
Good, he didn't have a choice because he didn't know sin. Real simple, sir.
It's like he's I don't want to say a robot, but if he's telling to be Christ-like and he never knew sin, he never had the choice to sin
Right.
You never knew.
That's a great point. All right, here's my response to you. I have never once raped a woman. That does not mean that I am not in a position to know that rape is wrong. I have never once murdered a human being. That does not mean that I'm in a position to not understand that murder is wrong. And I never once have brought a whip down on the back of a slave. That does not mean that I'm in a position not to know that slavery is wrong. Because I have a conscience and a rational mind, I am able to look at evil and call it evil even though I've not experienced it. Same with Jesus. You're right, Jesus never sinned, but he had a rational mind, he had a conscience, and he could look at evil and say, that's evil, I'm not going to do it. You don't have to experience evil in order to know that it's evil. You can exercise your conscience and your rational mind and say, that is evil, I refuse to do it. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, but I mean, if it's in his thought, evil in thought is. I mean, if he can rationalize evil, that's evil. I mean,
Okay, good. Okay, good. Your point is, wait a second. If I can think about evil, then that's evil. No.
Well, no. I mean, he can comprehend evil. I mean, God cannot comprehend. I mean, if you say that God is, maybe that is limiting. I'm a little confused on this limiting factor because
It's a difficult issue. You're right. The whole idea of God limiting himself, that's a difficult issue. I agree. See, my point, though, is if God is all-powerful, then obviously he can do whatever he wants to do, up to some extent. He can't violate his character. If his character is holy, he's not going to do that which is evil. But if he's all-powerful, he can choose to limit his power by creating us free. That's not irrational. That's not inconsistent.
We cannot verify, like, hey, we're talking about dead man rising from the grave. So,
Learn it from someone.
so you know, if you're talking about someone who believes that that happened, how can you, how can you know that that was actually the truth? Say somebody tells me David Copperfield made the Statue of Liberty disappear. They saw it, they believe it. How can they convince me, who didn't see it, that that happened?
Right. Well, what you do is you look them in the face and you start asking why. And you don't stop asking why. You just keep on asking, why do you believe that? What is the evidence that you believe, that what you believe is true? And you seek to understand what led that person to that. All right, well, if it's regard to David Copperfield, we can go out and talk with David Copperfield. And we can figure out, what's David Copperfield into? And did he really make the Statue of Liberty disappear, or didn't he? Is he a magician, or did he really make the thing disappear? Was it an illusion, or was it reality?
What are we talking about with the resurrection? Is it an illusion or is it reality? How can you say that it's reality if it's somebody's account? I mean, how can you take their word as a believer in this event? How can you take their word to be absolute truth of the historic event rather than believing in something that they saw and that they believe in?
Well, you push it back and you go to the source documents, the Gospels. And you ask, okay, I'm going to read these things skeptically. I'm going to ask, first of all, did Christ really die? Now, the interesting thing is the Gospel of John records an interesting tidbit of information. The Gospel of John records that a Roman soldier stuck a spear in the side of Christ, and an issue of watery serum, separate from clotted blood, flowed from his side. Well, they didn't understand that medically in the first century, but we understand medically today that that's a sign of death. Massive heart failure, clotting of the arteries. The guy was dead. He just didn't lapse into unconsciousness and resuscitate, in other words. Then we read, they took his body off the cross, put it in a tomb, and they set a Roman guard to make sure that nobody would steal his body. Now, the disciples were not expecting him to rise from the dead. They were scared, they didn't understand, and they were deserting Christ. But 3 days after he dies, he appears risen from the dead, first of all, to some grief-torn women. Now, I'm impressed with that, because a first-century Jewish male would never have a Jewish woman be his eyewitness in order to gain credibility, because sexism was pathetic in that culture, and women were viewed as chattel. It was horrible. But the record is, Christ first appeared to some grief-torn women. Then he appeared to the apostles. But there was one guy who could have been on the faculty here at UT. His name was Thomas. And he said, not unless I can see Christ with my own eyes, not unless I can take my hand and thrust in the spoon in his side, will I believe. And one night all the disciples are together. Thomas is there. Suddenly Christ stands among them, walks right up to Thomas and says, my man right here, take your hands, put in the nail prints in my hands, take your hand and thrust it in the spear in my side. And Thomas stopped doubting and believed. Then in 1 Corinthians 15, written in 50, 51, 52 AD, the Apostle Paul quotes a hymn, a creed, that Christ died for our sins, was buried, rose from the dead, appeared to the apostles, to James, and to over 500 people who saw him risen from the dead, most of whom are still living. And you see that the resurrection of Christ was not made up by a church that was trying to increase its adherents. Right from the get-go, the resurrection of Christ was at the center of the message of these followers of Christ. We have seen this man risen from the dead. Then, one after another, they stood before Roman soldiers, and the Roman soldiers said, acknowledge Caesar as Lord and live, or else maintain that Jesus is Lord and we'll kill you. And every single one of them said, I have seen Jesus risen from the dead, and they died, not for a belief. They died for what they claimed to have seen, the dead Christ risen from the dead. Psychology shows you, people will not die to cover up what they know to be a lie. People will die for a lie, convinced it's true. But these guys died claiming we saw Jesus risen from the dead, he is Lord. Which means if they didn't see him, they were lying.
But this isn't in the Roman writings. There's no record of this slaughter.
Eusebius records it wonderfully.
Schizophrenia is a disease which is common.
That's right. Jesus was a schizophrenic. And so were Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They were all a bunch of schizophrenics. How on earth can you read the Gospels, the teachings of Christ, and conclude that the guy had mental problems? How on earth can you read the Sermon on the Mount and conclude that Jesus had mental problems? Come on.
How can you
His
prove?
resurrection.
When was the last time you saw a resurrection of
When was the
anybody?
last time I saw?
You
I
saw
never
a
have seen
dead.
resurrections.
Exactly. Can you? I mean, have you ever seen any kind of a phenomenon like that before?
No.
I mean, no. I mean, so how can you believe something like that?
Because
Yes, you
first
can
of all,
believe. I mean,
the
somebody
evidence is
dying.
that a supernatural God exists, and because a supernatural God exists, he is totally capable of performing a miracle.
So you've seen God, basically?
No, I've seen evidence that God exists.
Like what? What
Order and
evidence?
design of the cosmos, life coming from life, not from non-life, moral absolutes pointing us to the fact that there's more to reality than matter and energy,
Okay,
free
you can't-
will.
But I'm sure you can. All right, unless you can you prove that we even exist?
Sir, I can't even prove we're having this conversation.
Exactly, exactly. So I mean, when you start talking about all these different things, and what you're basically talking about is whose rhetoric is stronger, and then
No.
you would follow that.
No, sir. No, sir. Right here. I can't prove to you he's sitting here. It is not an issue of rhetoric, whether I stop my hand right there. It is an issue of evidence. The evidence is he is sitting here. That's why I don't keep swinging through his handsome face. Has nothing to do with rhetoric. Has to do with evidence that the guy's sitting here. I base my life on evidence. I can't prove to you he's there, but boy, the evidence of my eyesight is he is there. Therefore, I stop when his face begins.
But where's the evidence of resurrection?
That's historical evidence. The historical evidence found in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John is that the guy really died on a cross, was really buried, and 3 days later really came alive again.
And that's exactly what I'm saying. Is that's rhetoric. I'm not saying that.
What do you mean that's rhetoric? It is words, yes, well, you do agree on that.
Right, and I'm saying that to prove something, in order for them to prove something, they would have to say all these things, and they're doing exactly that.
We already agreed
and I'm not
upon the
saying
fact
that
we
they
can't
didn't
prove
believe it.
anything. So
And I
don't
didn't
use
say-
proof. I
I
can't use proof.
Okay, but I'm
Evidence.
talking about evidence that they're saying, and well, I'm saying proof because that's what they're using. Because I'm saying that they're using rhetoric for people to believe in these things, and to believe in Jesus, and belief is irrational. So I mean, it could be.
No, belief is not irrational. It doesn't have to be irrational. It can be irrational. But if your belief is based on solid evidence, that's not an irrational belief.
But then it's not belief.
Yes, it is belief.
I mean, if it's solid evidence, then it's concrete. I mean, there's no belief in it. then.
Prove to me the University of Texas is going to grant you a diploma on your day of graduation. Prove to me UT is not going to say, hey, let's break tradition, no diplomas this year. It is possible.
Prove to me that you're going to get to heaven, even if you do all the things that
I can't
Bible
prove
says.
it.
Then there we go. So that's rhetoric.
But there's evidence that UT is a reliable institution of higher learning. Based on that evidence, you pay a big tuition, you study hard to get a diploma. That's belief.
Yep.
And that belief is based on evidence. You don't prove UT is going to give you a diploma. The evidence is, if you complete the course of study, if you pay your tuition, they'll give you a diploma. So you have belief. Prove to me your roommate's not going to stick a knife in your back tonight. You can't prove it. Prove to me that your closest friend is not going to stick a knife in your back tomorrow.
I can't.
Exactly.
And I don't have a belief in that, though.
You don't.
I'm certainly, I expect anybody to stab me in the back. True, yes. And I'm from New York, too, so I'm sure you believe that, too, right?
Well, I think...
Or you know that, I should say.
Although I cannot prove to you that my best friend is not going to stick a knife in my back, there's a lot of evidence that my best friend is not going to stick a knife in my back. That's why when I see my best friend on Wednesday, I'm not going to check her pockets and purse to find out if she got a knife in there.
Okay.
That's belief, sir.
Okay.
When there's so much cosmic activity going on, the chance for something like this to happen, where the energy would come together, there would be a big boom, is infinitely larger than you're making it seem. If you want to talk about plausibility among society, do you think it's more plausible that God came down to the mountain, wrote the Ten Commandments on some stone, and Moses brought them down, or that the first beings got together and said, gee, you think we shouldn't kill each other? Boy, probably not good to sleep with his wife. That's more plausible. Natural law and science coming together in the multitude of things that happen in the cosmos is more plausible.
All right. If what you say is true, that means murder is not absolutely wrong, it's relatively wrong. Because human beings created that moral. Correct?
Even if God
Right?
created it,
Correct.
you say
All right.
thing.
Which means if I choose to murder him, from your perspective, that might be wrong. From my perspective, it might be right. Your worldview demands that you acknowledge you're not really right and I'm not really wrong. I'm not really right and you're not really wrong. It's all relative.
Right, it's relative to the grand scheme, to the majority morality. If there are 10% of the people who think that murdering is correct, then you can judge by the fact that there's 90% of people who are sure that it's wrong, that then in our morality, and morality is a relative thing.
Right.
Morality is not an absolute thing. Our morality changes all the time.
Uh-huh.
So, morally, it is wrong to kill him. If you think it is correct to kill him, then you work under a different moral system that does not mesh with the moral system of the world.
Right.
Correct.
So, you're born in Nazi Germany. Majority of people believe that we better get rid of the Jewish people.
But
So
that's still
that's
a minority.
morally-
We're not talking about a majority of 6 people. We're talking about a majority of the world.
Of the world, I see. So in order to understand what's right and wrong, we need to take a survey of every person on the planet to understand what the majority really believe is true. And then once we've taken that survey and we've gotten the status quo, the majority opinion, then we understand that that's right and wrong?
No, that's not how morality works.
Well, then what are you telling me? What's the basis of morality? I thought you just told me the basis of morality is majority opinion.
It is. But
Thank
I
you.
did not
That's what I thought
say,
you
what I
said.
did not say was that we needed to take a survey of each individual person to decide what morality was. Rather, morality is something that is accepted. For example, it would be the same thing if God created morality, then it's relative to what God thought, and tomorrow God could change his mind, and we could all murder each other and it'd be great. So every day we'd have
If
to take
God
a
is that
survey.
way.
So every day we'd have to take a survey of God or
If
the
God
priest
were that
or
way.
the Pope or whoever you want to
Right.
survey of and tell them, okay, is it okay to murder today or is still that
Right.
still a bad thing?
Right.
So it's the same thing. It's
No, it's
relative
not
to
the same thing.
Yes, it is.
Because Jesus Christ insisted that God does not change, that God's character is just, and God has defined injustice very clearly, dehumanizing people, attacking the dignity and sanctity of human life. And because God's character does not change, his definition of justice and injustice does not change.
You try to label other aspects of other religions with your religion, that's where you're encroaching upon the lines of other religions. And I think that's wrong.
Well, obviously, I'm here at the University of Texas to try and persuade you to read the Gospels and look at Jesus. Now, if you accuse me of encroaching on you, I disagree.
What if if a person is in a school where everybody worships fire, and then the people, they come to you and they try to relate their religion with your religion, and you really respect your religion and you don't want to know about their religion, but they're actually relating their religion with you, how would you feel?
And they try to put your religion in their own words.
I see it all the time. People look me in the face and say, Cliffe, you're wrong. There is no God. Now, That's not them encroaching their opinion on me. I want to talk with people. I want to share ideas. That's what a liberal arts education is all about. A free exchange of ideas where we disagree with each other. We're not going to stick a knife in each other's back. We're going to agree to disagree.
Well, what if you don't want to listen to them? They're just coming to you and they're telling you that you're going to hell if you're not following our religion. Even though you think that religion does not have to do anything with your religion. But even
when a Muslim tells me that I'm going to hell because I don't believe Allah and trust Muhammad, I look him in the face and say, I respect your opinion. I obviously totally disagree with you. Now please explain to me why you believe what you believe, and I hope you'll listen to me explain why I believe what I believe. And if an atheist tells me there is no God, I don't say that you're encroaching on me. I say, all right, why do you believe what you believe? And let me explain to you why I believe what I believe. And if someone comes to my door and knocks on the door and they want to talk to me, if I don't have the time, I say, I'm sorry, I don't have the time, and I shut the door.
It's not that I don't have the time. I don't want to hear, okay?
Right, if I don't want to hear what someone says, I say, thank you for your time, I gotta leave. Goodbye, and I shut the door.
There's a difference between talking about your religion, okay, and placing your terms, your terminology, your beliefs in a certain religion upon another religion. There's completely different. I'm not saying you don't have the right of speech, that you can't stand down here and talk about Christianity all day, come out here once a week to talk about it. I'm not saying you don't have the right to do that. You have the right to do that all you want. But the fact that you try to, I'm not saying you encroach upon me either. You're encroaching upon other people's religions. Christianity is not the only religion in the world. The fact that you're trying to label other religions, other entities, and other religions with the term God, Jesus, and thereof from the Bible, I think that is completely wrong of the religion Christianity. That is where their flaw is. It's not that you don't.
All right. I'm sure that there are followers, I know that there are followers of Christ, and I'm sure that I at times have fallen in when we've been insensitive to other people and to other religions. I'm sure that that's happened, and I'm very sorry for any time that I have done that. Believe me, I work hard not to do that. But I have a big, big disagreement with the definition of tolerance in this culture that says tolerance means Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, and Jesus all said the same thing. That is false. That's being brain dead. That's not being tolerant. I have to study the teachings of the Buddha, I've got to study the Quran, I've got to study the Bhagavad Gita, and I've got to study the New Testament, and I've got to respect each one of those enough to take them for what they say. And if I stand out here and say, all Chinese people look the same, it shows I'm either not Chinese or I haven't taken the time to get to know Chinese people, because in reality, all Chinese people do not look the same. And if I stand out here and say all religions are the same, it shows I'm either not very religious or I haven't taken the time to study and respect the different major world religions. So, we study the different major world religions. I seek to understand what you as a Buddhist believe. And then I seek, if I disagree with you, to express to you, sir, I disagree with you.
I don't say that I don't appreciate, I don't acknowledge your religion. That's not my point here. My point here is, I have a lot of Christian friends. I came from a very heavy Judeo-Christian area in North Dallas, very, upper class. Mostly everyone was Judeo-Christian in my area. Okay, I'm not arguing the fact that it's not a good religion or whatever, okay? Every religion has flaws. I acknowledge that already. The fact is, from where I came from when I grew up, Judeo-Christian was the only religion that I saw that tried to apply their labels upon other religions. Not, I'm not saying you can talk about your religion all day. I'm not saying that I condemn your religion, okay? I think Judeo-Christian in its own right, if followed, is a very good religion. The problem where it comes in is where they try to apply themselves to every single religion that exists.
Well, what do you mean when you say apply themselves to every other religion?
Terms, stories, just try to convert everything into, oh, this is because, okay, this is the way it was because we defined it, okay, according to the Bible. Because everybody's following general good. There is no superior entity in Buddhism, okay? The fact that they follow, karma, Buddhism, I don't need to get into Buddhism. The fact is that they don't try to they don't say there's a God, but then just like a while ago, you termed Buddhisms are trying to follow a general God. There is no God, okay?
Right.
There is no God. There is no God. Christianity, there is a God.
Right.
The fact that you try to apply terms to other religions, I think that's where you're encroaching upon other religions. I'm not saying that I don't acknowledge your religion.
By me saying Buddha was agnostic when it comes to the issue of God is encroaching?
No. But the fact that you said that all Buddhisms were trying to follow a God and thus it is your Christian God, that's incorrect.
I never said that.
You said, okay,
Buddhists are not following Jesus.
Right. You said You said that Buddhism, Islam, all the major religions in the world try to follow a general good, and that is basically God. Your God. That's incorrect. There's no such term as a God in Buddhism. This is just an example, okay? I'm not saying this is the only thing.
Oh, I'm sorry, I've miscommunicated. One of my pieces of evidence for the existence of God is that every culture is filled with human beings who have an innate longing to know God. Not the Judeo-Christian God, necessarily, but we have a deep desire to know God. And anthropology shows us that. And my point was simply, due to the universality of this drive to know God, I feel that that's one piece of evidence that indeed there is some type of God. That's all I was saying.
Well, do you kind of see what I'm saying? We believe that there is no greater immortal being or some superior being that exists. The fact that you say that every religion is trying to find a greater being, a greater God, or trying to follow, you can say that you're trying to say it in your own words, but the fact is, you're already applying other religions to what you believe in, and that is wrong. And the fact that you're doing it minorly, but a lot of people misuse that and they try to preach other religions and try to denounce other religions through Christianity. But it's happened to me before, okay? You might not do it.
I understand.
You cannot place yourself in his condition.
Right.
Because you
I'm not
are
placing
already,
myself in your condition.
You are already you happen to be in a religion which already dominates the whole of globe, right? And you cannot see his point of view because you are not the minority religion. You're not one of the people who adhere to the minority religion, and you are not imposed by the people who are with the majority religion. That is why you cannot communicate with him, right?
Exactly.
Sir, I'm in a minority at the University of Texas. I'm in a minority in the United States.
Sense that most of the people in the world believe in one God. You're a majority in that sense, and that is why you're trying to relate your religion with the majority of the religion.
That's not what I was trying to do. I was simply trying to make a statement. One of my pieces of evidence that God exists is the universal human drive to know God or gods. And what I said was, in light of how many people around the world have a desire to know God.
Do you see what you're doing, though? You're saying that everybody,
what if
everybody in the world is searching for
everybody.
What if a fire worshiper?
Most societies are looking for a general good, and thus you say everybody's trying to look for a general God. You can't say that. Other societies don't believe in a God. You can't apply your term of God to every society that exists.
I disagree strongly.
No, what if,
I strongly disagree. The majority of people on the planet have an innate drive to know God, and the plethora of religions bear that out.
You're just assuming that.
I'm not assuming it. You study anthropology. You study cultures.
They say humanity is looking for a general good, not a general God, okay? That's where you're going wrong. This is just one example that it's happened before.
I disagree. The majority of people in the world are searching for some type of God, some type of superior being.
That's wrong. That is
not wrong.
Nobody in Buddhism is looking for a superior being.
He's saying the majority. That's a true statement. I agree in that way. That's the majority of the human beings. That's a true statement. Very true in the world. He's looking way out in the world, not you or me or him. That's true.
You did not say the majority. You say every human being.
You did.
You said.
All right. No, I might have said every human being has an innate drive to know God.
Mistakes like that. It's mistakes like that.
No, I don't think that's a mistake.
Okay,
I'll stay with that statement. Every human being has an innate drive to know God. We can suppress that, and many of us do suppress that. But I will stand by that statement that every human being has an innate drive to know God.
I don't know, I read it or I heard it. What if somebody comes to you and tells you the gods are dead?
Right.
And you know the word dead. Dead is gone.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
Where are we?
Well, I think it's real simple. God is dead. Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche is dead. God. Which one is true?
Nietzsche was not God.
No. Friedrich Nietzsche said, God is dead. My response to Friedrich Nietzsche is dead. God. The point is, God's not dead. What an incredible statement is that for Nietzsche to make? God is dead.
Yesterday you said the Lord, Jesus Christ, is God.
Yes.
But Jesus Christ is crucified, he's dead.
Hey, he rose from the dead.
Well, where is he?
Where is he?
Yeah.
He's in heaven.
Now he's dead then.
No, he's alive.
I mean, when you die and you go to when you die and you go to heaven, you're dead. I mean, you're not in life. That's my philosophy of interpreting your words. I don't know whether I'm there or not. That's how I interpret your words. Am I correct?
All right, let's go over it step by step. He died on a cross. He was put in a tomb.
Oh, we know that. We know the story. We know everything.
I don't think you all do.
We know
Maybe
the
you do.
story.
I don't think everybody here does.
Yes, we know it. Everybody knows. Everybody. Well,
he was put in a tomb. A stone was rolled in front of the tomb. A Roman guard was set to make sure that nobody would steal his body.
Yes, we know the
All
story.
of his disciples dispersed in disillusionment. Case closed. The guy's dead.
There we go.
3 days after that, they saw him risen from the dead.
No, that's right. I'm following. You're right. I agree. I know that. We know that. Everybody knows that.
So they saw Jesus over a period of 40 days. He appeared at different times in different places, risen from the dead.
That's right.
Then he ascended to heaven.
True.
So you ask me, where's Jesus now? Well, he's not over in Palestine. He ascended to heaven.
Well, my point, you probably didn't get my point. Do you believe, or do we have this great belief that Jesus Christ is returning to our planet?
He promised to return again.
That's what I'm getting at.
Yes, sir. He promised to return again.
It is.
Correct.
So that's where you say he's still alive, somewhere, like you said, in heaven.
Yes.
That's your point.
Yes, sir.
That's kind of the definition of life is a little bit, I don't know, fluctuated here.
You bet.
I mean, where is life? There is life like they are trying to find that there is life all over. I don't know.
Okay, good point.
What
I don't know either.
What is it?
Okay.
So we just believe, huh? We just have this belief.
No. Based on the historical resurrection of Jesus from the dead,
yes,
I am convinced that when Jesus said that there's life after death, that he wasn't blowing smoke. He was speaking the truth.
Just for him or for everybody?
He promised that all of us who put our faith in him would receive eternal life. And because of his resurrection from the dead, I believe him. I went to college, and in college I would sit and learn from professors. The reason that I took what those professors said seriously was because the evidence was that they had studied hard, they had earned PhDs, they were educated men and women. Because of that, evidence of reliability, I sat in class, paid a lot of money to learn from them. That's faith. The reason that I trust Jesus when he says there's life after death is not because he has some earned PhDs. Rather, it's because he was dead and then he rose from the dead. That convinces me he's a reliable source of information about life after death.
How about the timing now? Do we have any knowledge about the timing of his return?
Great question. I am personally embarrassed by those churches that take out advertisements in the Wall Street Journal and say, October 28th, Jesus Christ will return. No, in Matthew chapter 24, Jesus clearly said, no one knows the day or hour of my return. Not the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. So, sir, I do not know when Jesus is going to return.
So that means, it's not that means, but it's like unlucky for those believers, super believers like you, for example. Say, I'm not saying, say somebody dies, like, a great believer dies tomorrow.
Yes.
And then in a year or so, Jesus Christ will come back to earth. What's the impact on their belief that those who were dead? Or would they know that their Lord came back, or would they do the same thing? I mean, you see what I'm saying?
That's a great point you're making. It's the exact point of the people in the church at Thessalonica.
So the church of what?
In Thessalonica.
What's that?
That's a city near the Mediterranean over in Asia Minor. Paul, the Apostle Paul, who was a follower of Jesus, wrote a letter to this church at Thessalonica. And part of the letter is dealing with the exact issue you raised. These Christians saw their fellow believers dying. And they thought, oh no, they're dying and Jesus hasn't returned. What's going to happen?
Yeah.
So you're asking the same question they were asking.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
What is
and
it?
Paul writes in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, for the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, with a trumpet call of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first.
Wow.
Then we who are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and thus we shall always be with the Lord. So those believers in Thessalonica had the same question you did, and Paul says, don't worry, when a Christian dies, their body obviously rots, but when Jesus returns a second time, their body will be raised to life. They'll receive a new body like the resurrection body of Christ.
Seems like it's going to be overpopulated.
Very good point. Excellent point.
I mean, billions of people.
That's right.
I mean, how?
Lots of people.
I mean, you know, is it going to be, what is it?
Great point.
Are we imagining, or is this a true fact?
Great point.
Is this imagination, or is
No, Jesus wasn't imagining. He spoke real clearly.
Huh?
All right. He points out that heaven is not just God redoing this earth, but heaven includes the rest of the cosmos. So, believe it or not, there's a large, there's a large cosmos out there. So no, the cosmos is not going to be overpopulated. There'll be enough resources for everybody.
But knew that we would use it evilly.
Because of his perspective outside of space and time, God sees tomorrow. So God sees what you and I will freely choose to do. But it's you doing it, it's not God doing it.
Well, but it's evil through omission. If I see a guy about to shoot someone else, right, and I neglect to do anything about it, even though it's within my power to do so, then aren't I guilty of this guy being shot?
God has chosen to create a world where you have a real free will, and he's chosen to set up what is called cause and effect. And he's not going to supernaturally intervene and cause the gun to misfire every time someone points it at an innocent person. But there's coming a day of judgment when he will haul you and me before him and hold us responsible for the free decisions that we made.
But if he's the ultimate cause, then he's responsible. Because we always go back to the cause, the root of the problem, right? So God is responsible for the gun going on.
No. The university is not responsible for what you choose to do with your education.
Cliffe, you're rejecting causality now. I thought that was part of rationality, isn't it?
No. It is totally irrational for you to blame the University of Arizona for what you do with the good education they give you. They give you a gift. How you choose to use that gift is your business.
Well, if they give me a bad education, then I can blame them, right?
If they give you a bad education, then they have not done what they said they were going to do. They've lied to you.
So I can blame them for that?
You cannot blame them for the irresponsible decisions that you make. You can blame them for not doing as good a job as they could have done.
So I can blame God for not doing as good a job as he could have done.
Which means you got a better way of doing it, so tell me what it is.
Well, no, I'm not saying I do.
Yes, it does.
I can blame.
If you're saying that God has done a bad job, it implies there's a better way that you know how to do it.
Well, not have people kill each other?
Yes, it does.
Well, okay, let's not have people kill each other.
Fine.
That's a better way.
Fine, but you've stripped us of our freedom.
Have I?
You sure have.
Not any more than omniscience has.
You have stripped us of our freedom if you say, I cannot take this hand and roll it into a fist and knock his block off. You can't. If you're going to strip me of my freedom, you're going to turn me into a machine. You see, when you give a person the ability to love, it means that they have the ability to hate, because love implies freedom. If I can love, it means I can choose to really care. Which means I can choose not to care. I can choose to hate and do violence.
But doesn't God's omniscience take away our freedom of choice?
If when we
strong argument.
If when we say God's omniscience, we mean God writes on a piece of paper what we're going to do tomorrow, locks it in a bank vault, and tomorrow we have to do what's written on the paper, you're right. Freedom of the will no longer exists. But if what we mean when we say God's omniscience is, because he is outside of the dimension of time, God sees tomorrow today, then it means God sees what we will freely choose to do tomorrow. And we still have free will. It is a fact that if there is no God, life is an accident. Life is meaningless. Therefore...
Just because an accident doesn't mean it's meaningless.
Well, how do you get meaning out of an accident?
My life isn't meaningless to me.
Ultimately, your life is meaningless.
No, it's not meaningless.
Oh, yes.
Your opinion that my life is meaningless?
No, in reality.
Putting me down.
In reality, if you're an accident, you don't have meaning to your life. You can give your life meaning. You can say, well, the meaning of my life is...
To serve God.
To make money.
Meaning. That's
Make money. What's the meaning of your life?
The meaning of my life is to survive, to exist, to be here. I want to go to school, I want to finish school, I want to get a job, I want to make money, maybe have a nice house, have a family. That's the meaning of my life. That's factual, that's here, that's real.
No, that's not factual.
That's not faith.
What is, no, it's incredible faith, what you just said. What you just said is such a faith statement, it's incredible. So you start with your life as an accident, and then you tell me, well, the meaning of my life is to go to school, make money, and have a family. So that's just, that you've just made up this thing.
That's my opinion.
It's your fantasy.
That's my opinion.
In reality, your life is an accident. It's
Where am I
meaningless.
at? What did I just say? I'm going to go to school, right? I'm in school right now. That's reality. That's not a fantasy. Next thing, I'm getting a job, right? That's reality. I'm getting a job after I graduate.
Yeah, but it ultimately doesn't matter whether you go to school or drop out. It ultimately doesn't matter whether you steal money or work and make money. It ultimately doesn't matter whether you rape a woman or marry a woman.
Why does it not ultimately matter?
Because life is an accident and you just create your own meaning.
But why is there...
So Hitler creates his meaning, Stalin creates his meaning, Mother Teresa creates her meaning. It's all relative. It's all subjective.
Why does that make it meaningless? Why does that make it meaningless?
Come on, you guys.
Because I don't
think consistently. Think consistently.
Because I don't serve God, my life is meaningless. Is that what
No, it's not what I said. What I said is, if you... No, that's not what I said. What I said was, if you believe there is no God, then you've got to understand that life is ultimately meaningless.
Exactly.
Which means the meaning that you attach to your life is simply a fantasy. It's a prejudice. It's a bias. And it doesn't ultimately matter whether you do the opposite of what you're choosing to do, because your life is an accident. That's why Camus said, you got to consider, why not commit suicide? This whole thing's an accident. I'm just arbitrarily attaching meaning to my life.
That doesn't make it any more meaningless to me. Some children today are accidents. Does that make them meaningless? It's an accident. It's not meaningless. That's a
Your
child.
worldview is we're all accidents. All of us.
So we're all meaningless. Everybody
That's
go kill yourself.
That's what your worldview
Everybody
is
go
saying.
kill yourself. We're all meaningless. It's all an accident. We don't serve God, so we're all meaningless.
You see, you atheists don't have the courage to live out your atheism. If I did what you did, you'd call me a hypocrite. If I were to say, I believe in Jesus, and then I go out and womanize, you'd call me a hypocrite, and you'd be right. If I say I believe in Jesus, I better not go out and womanize. Similarly, if you tell me that you believe there is no God, but then you tell me that your life has meaning, I'm going to look you in the face and say, you are one hypocrite, because you don't have the courage to live out what you believe.
How is that hypocritical at all, that I don't believe in God, that I have no meaning? See, exactly. I don't worship God, so I'm
Because
meaningless.
you say
Exactly what
there
you
is
said.
no God, life is ultimately meaningless, but then you go ahead and attach meaning to your life. That's the same as if I were to say, I believe in Jesus, and I'm going out and womanize. I don't have the courage to live out what I believe. If you really believe life is meaningless, live it out. Of course I struggle with doubt. Every single human being struggles with doubt. The question is, what do you do with your doubts? Do you allow your doubts to drive you into unbelief? Or do you allow your doubts to motivate you to study more hard? It is possible that she's not sitting here. It's possible. But right about now, I have to make a decision. And the decision is rather simple. Does the evidence point to her sitting here, in which case I better live that way, or does it not? I can doubt whether God exists. I can doubt whether Jesus Christ is reliable. But the problem is, Jesus revealed that God loves me. Jesus pointed out there's death, there's judgment, and there's heaven and hell. Which means I got to make a decision. Was Christ lying, or was Christ speaking the truth? And the only way I, as a thinking human being, can make that decision is by studying the evidence. How did Jesus live his life? How did he treat people? What did he teach ethically? How did he die? Did he really forgive his enemies? Did he really rise from the dead, or did he not? And if I study the evidence and find it pointing to his credibility, then I better make a decision and put my faith in him. Because you see, agnosticism is not an option. Romeo proposed to Juliet. And if Juliet would have looked at Romeo and said, I don't know, Romeo, then the day would have been over. Second day, Romeo could have come to Juliet. I love you, Juliet. Would you marry me? I don't know, Romeo. I don't know. And if they would have continued like that, they would have both died.
They did.
Exactly, without marrying each other. See, the point is, when someone loves you and calls you to respond to their love, agnosticism is not an option. Because if you say, I don't know, you are making a decision. And the decision is, no, not now. And so Jesus Christ revealed that God loves you and me, and he calls us to live in relationship with himself. To be agnostic is to say, I don't know, which is to say, not now. So Jesus says, you decide how you're going to respond to me. And agnosticism is not an option.
Why is it that if you've accepted Jesus and you've accepted, forgiveness from him, and he says he'll free you from sin, why is it that when we ask to be freed from certain sins that we struggle with, why is it that we continue to struggle with them?
Okay, good question. This gentleman asks, why, Cliffe, although you've put your faith in Christ, do you still struggle with sin? I mean, you asked Jesus to help you, and yet you still struggle with sin. For two reasons. First of all, I have built up a lot of excess baggage, a lot of bad habits in my life. And they don't all just disappear like that. The habits that I have developed often are very difficult for me to overcome. And yes, Christ helps me. But I have worn some very deep grooves in my brain about how to respond to certain situations, how to respond to people who treat me a certain way. And it is a challenge to change. Secondly, bottom line is, it's because I don't always want to change. That's my real problem. My real problem is, I do not always want to do it God's way. Frequently, I think I got a better way of doing it. God, Jesus, you tell me to be patient. Well, I think that person needs me in their face to straighten them out. Jesus, you tell me to turn the other cheek. Well, I think in this situation, that person needs me to swat them on the side of the head. Jesus, you tell me to be careful the way I use my tongue. Well, I just want to let it rip right now. It just feels good to let it rip. So the real problem is, I don't want to do it Christ's way all the time. I'm a stubborn rascal. And that's why I need to grow spiritually. That's why I need to be reading the Bible, praying, meeting with other believers. Because I got some bad habits and I got one stubborn will. And I need to grow spiritual muscle so that I can obey Christ when the heat is turned up, when the pressure's on. And that's not easy for me.
Joseph Campbell, who made the observation that religions tend to change as culture changes, as people grow, as people expand their minds, they understand the world, so does the religion. Where do you see religion going in the next 10 to 20 years? Where do you see it changing? For example, Scientology, different offshoots of Christianity. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, Joseph Campbell, fascinating gentleman, grew up in a Catholic home, went to Catholic school through junior high school. And basically, when you take a little bit of a look at Joseph Campbell, you begin to realize that guy was reacting against his strict Catholic upbringing, it seems. He had a very negative experience, a very overbearing experience with the Catholic Church up through junior high school. And when you study his comments about Christianity, it's a little scary. It seems more like he's just reacting to an overly strict nun. Second point, you're right. One of Joseph Campbell's main points is all religion is essentially the same. It's sort of a spirit that you got to get into. A spirit of religion, and religion goes in a lot of different directions. And it's all basically true. Well, how can you, as a thinking person, can you buy that line? When you study the Vedas and Upanishads of Hinduism, you realize that God is plural and impersonal. But when you read the Torah and the New Testament, God is singular, one God, and personal. He loves you and he loves me. You can't have it both ways. Either God is impersonal or God is personal. Either God is many, plurality, or God is one. You can't have it both ways. They contradict. When you read the teachings of the Buddha, he was obviously a very wise man who taught moderation, and I respect him, as I'm sure you do. But Buddha never talked about the supernatural, and Buddha never talked about supernatural aid. But blast it all, when you read the Old and New Testament, You got God giving supernatural aid to the Jews to get them out of Egypt. You got Jesus performing miracles. You got Jesus rising from the dead. You got supernatural aid all over the place. So what's the story? Is there a supernatural God who wants to help you and me? Or is there no supernatural God? Is there just teachings on how to live your life? Be a good guy. So which way is it? You see, so I respect Joseph Campbell as a thinking gentleman, but I don't see how a person can agree with him after studying the major world religions and seeing that there are some fundamental contradictions. They're not all saying the same.
Where do you see the eventuality of the understanding of God coming for his children? Supposedly the Christians believe he'll be coming soon, supposedly be coming for his church. Do you think that's a reality in modern times, in this century, the millennium ends and starts anew? Do you see actually God coming for his children and the world changing?
All right.
As it is described in the Bible? Do you see that as a reality?
Okay. A lot of my friends say to me, Cliffe, just be optimistic about the future. And I say, why? Why should I be optimistic about the future? And they say, well, because positive thinking will help you get ahead. But my question is, why should I be positive about the future in light of all the suffering, evil, and death around me? Now, I am an optimist, but there's a reason I'm an optimist. And that's because I'm convinced that history's not going to end with a nuclear bang as we blow ourselves to bits. History's not going to end as the sun burns out and we all freeze to death. Instead, I'm convinced that Jesus Christ spoke the truth when he promised to return a second time. And yes, sir, Jesus promised that human history would come to a close when he returned a second time, not as a baby born in a manger, but in power and great glory. And the reason that I trust Jesus is because 3 days after he died, he rose from the dead. And that resurrection of Christ points me to his trustworthiness, his reliability. So the reason that I'm an optimist is because I'm convinced history is not a meaningless cycle of events. History was begun by God when he created the heavens and the earth. Genesis 1 records that. And human history will come to a close when Christ returns a second time. That's why I'm an optimist. Are you an optimist regarding the future?
Well, the question that I put forth to you wasn't necessarily whether you were an optimist or whether I was an optimist. I was just trying to get your take on how you saw or what you see as happening if God comes and for his church. I mean, what's your outlook on life? How do you think it'll change? I mean, from what I understand, he's going to come, everything's going to change. Where his church is going to be, it's going to be like life on heaven on earth for a certain time after he comes again. Now, I'm just saying, right. I'm just trying to identify with the reality of that. I mean, is that plausible? Is that? I mean, how do you think it's? What's your take on that when he does come back?
Well, see, that's what I was trying to answer. See, I'm an optimist regarding the future because I'm convinced that Jesus Christ is returning a second time. There'll be a day of judgment. There'll be a real heaven and a real hell. Now, I deserve to go to hell. But I know I'm going to heaven because I put my faith in Christ, and he's forgiven me for my sin, and he's given me a gift, eternal life. But because I'm convinced he's returning, I'm an optimist. I can hardly wait. Because you see, because I believe that Jesus is returning, and there'll be a day of judgment and a heaven and a hell, I know that justice is going to win. Listen to the Negro spirituals. Listen to the slaves of the black African-American slaves. They looked forward to the return of Christ because they knew that on that day, justice would win. No more evil perpetrated on them by powerful white racists. And that's the type of hope that I have, because life is unfair. Life throws screwballs at you and me. Life hurts often, and death stinks. But Jesus Christ promised to return a second time. There'd be a resurrection from the dead, a day of judgment, a separation, a real heaven, a real hell. And that's why I look forward to the future, because I know that in the end of human history, justice, goodness, kindness triumphs, evil, injustice is defeated. Have I answered you or not?
Well, I'm just trying to get an idea of, okay, let's say he comes down. Okay, here he is, second coming. And what happens to the financial markets? What happens to mortgage rates? What happens to the way we look at life in general? Is it all just going to go to hell?
Real
is
simple.
it all just going to
when Jesus Christ returns a second time, Wall Street will close up. everything will shut down real quick, and there'll be a day of judgment, and then there'll be a real heaven and real hell. And the University of Arizona will shut down. And the Arizona Wildcats will not be playing any more football or basketball. And there won't be any more Final Four. Yes, sir.
So why do we exist?
Why do we exist?
Why did God create us?
Well, if there is no God, there is no answer to the question why we exist. If there is no God, you're a hunk of primordial slime evolved to a higher order, and that's all I am. And life is a cosmic accident. But Jesus Christ insisted God created you and me for a purpose. And that purpose is to love and worship God and to love and serve each other. That's why education is good. Education is good because education is developing your mind so that you can serve God by serving people more productively, more effectively. That's why if you put your faith in Christ, you study harder because you begin to realize the motive for me to get an education is not just to get a higher paying job. Rather, the motive for me to get an education is so I can develop my God-given talents so that I can serve people and produce a better product more efficiently and effectively. And when you put your faith in Christ, you understand, I'm a steward of the money that I have. And I'm not just going to hoard it all for myself. I'm going to learn to share with God's unfed children. And I'm going to learn to make a difference in this world for Christ by helping people. Why do you think Mother Teresa worked among the dying in Calcutta, India? A Duke University student said, because she had a drive to preserve the genetic pool. Trash. Wrong. Time out. Mother Teresa worked among the dying in Calcutta, India, because she understood God has called me to do this. And I love these people, and I want to help them die with dignity. And when you put your faith in Christ, be you a CEO, a CFO, or a UFO, be you a street cleaner, a janitor, a professional athlete, that doesn't matter. Whatever you do to serve Christ by serving people.
What I always hear, like pastors, all kinds of people say is that God, one of our requirements is to worship God, and that He requests that. Well, I can understand wanting us to love each other and wanting us to love and appreciate Him, but it seems odd to me that a father figure giving a gift to his children ever truly expects that in return. I mean, just like a parent with a small child, you really don't, you give them your love and attention and everything freely. You don't give it expecting to be worshipped in return. You hope for it and you want it and you desire it, but I don't see where it just seems strange to me that it's demanded or expected to worship.
Good question.
Bizarre.
Great question. The question this woman asks is, why does God demand that we worship God? And the answer to that is very simple. For your well-being, for my well-being. What does it mean to worship? To worship means to consider ultimately worthy. To worship means to consider ultimately worthy. And all of us worship someone or something. You can worship your boyfriend, you can worship sex, you can worship a career, a corporation, a salary, a rung on the corporate ladder, you can worship athletics. You are going to consider someone or something ultimately worthy. Now, if you and I live for a person, we're setting ourselves up for some incredible pain. If you and I worship money, we are setting ourselves up for a major midlife crisis, for some incredible pain. If you and I worship athletics, one day the elasticity is going to drain out of our legs and our life will be over. And we're setting ourselves up for some incredible pain and despair. But when you and I worship God, when you and I consider Jesus Christ ultimately worthy, He gives our life a fulfillment, a depth, a fullness, a richness, a wideness, a breadth that is exciting. So you see, the reason that God calls you and me to worship Him is not because God has a weak ego that needs to be massaged by our worship. No, quite to the contrary. God calls us to worship Him for our benefit, not for His benefit. God doesn't need my worship. God doesn't need your worship. Worshiping God, worshiping Christ, which is simply another way of saying considering Him ultimately worthy.
I think it's the connotations that go with the word worship that caught me up.
Right.
You know, the pictures that you get in your mind.
Yeah, right. The worship means, to some people, to sort of grovel in the dirt and go, oh, I believe in God. No, that's not worship. To worship means to stand in awe, to reverence God. It means to love Him, to adore Him, to praise Him, to thank Him, to live a life of gratitude to Him for all the gifts He's given us. That's what worship means. Worship is not groveling in the dirt.